and we can cut this bit out and chop it around. So
Well, you do know that we never seem to cut out any of our beginnings, so let's just get into it, mate. Welcome back, Joe. Welcome everyone to episode 2 of the Electorate Project research project podcast. This is the second episode about the journey, and so a conversation between myself, James Robson, and Joseph Gaunt. Welcome, Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think I should say at the outset, this might not end up being episode 2. This is a recording of our next episode, or the next recording in the sequence, but maybe not episode 2, depending on how this turns out and what else we talk about in future conversations. But it is the next week and our next scheduled appointment for recording the podcast. So yeah, let's get stuck in. Nice to be here, James. Thanks for doing this again.
Awesome. So just as we start, can you give us a quick reminder of what the e-lectorate project actually is?
Yeah, sure. So the e-lectorate project is, in short, a research project designed to see if social networking technology could improve UK democracy, and with that, maybe make us more of a direct democracy, but certainly give people, the electorate, the ability to interact with MPs and their constituency and public institutions that govern our lives, and get updates from them, and to hold these people and bodies to a higher degree of account, for the stuff they're doing, the decisions they're making. But yeah, just to bridge that gap between people and the democratic society we live in. So yeah, politically themed social network is the summary of it. But we're just trying to see if people will engage with it, and that's the aim of the research project. Has this got legs? Is it something people are interested in, or is it a big waste of time and no one cares about what's going on in politics and democracy, and no one wants to say, and everyone's happy with the way things are?
Well, I think I definitely got to say, yeah, probably not happy with the current status quo, and probably not happy that they don't have any kind of direct engagement or the feeling of direct engagement.
I think,
Go
yeah,
on.
sorry, James. No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's the lack of voice, and your assessment of not being very happy is probably shared by a lot of people, considering the political direction of the UK, and not being able to intervene. Doesn't make us a democracy, in my opinion. Democracy, you go out to the people and you get their views and their thoughts on how you should approach things, and then the elected representative execute on those thoughts and opinions. And I don't feel like people have an opportunity to voice an opinion, and these elected representatives listen to them, or even have the tools to be able to measure that opinion and in the right way. So that's what we're trying to do with the research project.
Yeah, I've kind of become part of a number of the all-party parliamentary groups nipping into Westminster and Parliament to attend meetings and group meetings. And one of the questions that seems to pop up on a regular basis is an MP asking, can we have a show of hands of who's actually written a letter to their MP? And there's usually not a very strong show of hands there. And after watching lots of documentaries about politics and various different groups, there seems to be a proliferation of lobbying groups globally that actually is able to sway policy by the tactics that they employ and the people that they get to be able to have that engagement with. Because how much mindshare can you have with a Secretary of State that is being pulled in multiple directions and trying to control, let's say, education or healthcare or civil society or justice or any of the departments really, and they've all ended up with quite curious names as well. There's the one that's is quite interesting to me is the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, also colloquially known as DLUC. And so you're not even sure as a member of the electorate that who you should be talking to in the first place.
Yeah,
So how do you know this stuff?
Well, it's really difficult. So um, to touch on the lobbying point, and then get onto the how do you find out this information? In the late one of the latest blog posts that's up on the e-lectorate project website at the moment, it's only a really short blog, which is me waxing lyrical about the issues and the research project and what it tries to solve. But we talk about um, how lobbyists are really the only voice in democracy because they can influence and get direct access to these politicians, and the principle of a democracy being everyone is equal and everyone's voice is equal, kind of doesn't happen because we've got these big, well-funded lobbyist groups that can spend an awful lot of time and resources um, being in and amongst government bodies and government officials, which to the average voter they can't do, right. They work jobs, they've got childcare, they've got commitments, which means that they can't just pick up, go to Westminster and hang around the House of Commons for 8 hours a day, which a lot of these lobbyists do, and get access to politicians and have meetings with them. You can book a meeting with your MP, but I don't want to say that lobbyists get priority, but there's certainly an air of they have a level of access that the ordinary person doesn't have, and that doesn't sound like a democracy to me. That sounds like one voice being more important than the others. So we're trying to make it more of a level playing field with the lecture application, the kind of product of the research project. To the other point, which was around where do you find out information? Is There is a central source of information on the gov.uk website, so you can get from there a list of all public bodies, uh, and some of those public bodies have different kind of feeds you can subscribe to. Um, you have to go to the Parliament website to get information on Westminster elected officials. If you're in Wales, you have to go to the Senedd website. If you're in Scotland, they have a different website as well, and same with Northern Ireland. So for the UK, there's as a whole, all of the countries that make up the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, it's there's not one source, which again is another problem that we're trying to solve for the electorate project, to the point where we've created profiles for every elected official, whether they're in Westminster, the Senedd, Scottish Parliament, or even Northern Ireland legislative function, um, the MLAs, I believe they're called, and uh, and then with all the public bodies as well, we've created profiles for them, well, on the principle that they work on behalf of society and the people that live in their society, so they're directly accountable to those people, and therefore they have a profile. And that profile, we spent a lot of hours finding sources where we could pull the public information that they post into the platform. So there's a we've developed it's not technologically advanced anyway, but a way that we can pull any public information they post on their website, and put it into the platform. We don't integrate with things like Twitter and Facebook and other social media sites, so we don't get that data. But all the stuff they publicly push out there, we can get. So a user can go into the electorate app, find something they want to follow. Say it's D-Luck, which sounds like something you get in a hardware store, and follow them, comment on what they do, vote their posts up or down, or we've got like an indifferent, like a red amber and a red amber green. So red is a down arrow, green is an up arrow, and the amber is kind of like oh yeah, I'm not sure if I like it or not. So it's indifferent, which we know. We haven't found another platform to have, so we don't know how it's going to react with our users, which is why we're doing a lot of testing. But it's there, and they can comment on it, and they can follow. And then the owner of that account, which at the moment is nobody, but of course these public institutions can take ownership of their account, will be able to see that information, that data, and see, well, do people like it? Are they voting it up? Are they voting it down? Are they leaving negative comments? Are they leaving positive comments? Is what we're saying on track? Could we post a poll, for example, on what it is we're doing, or that help shape policy? So they have all the tools at their disposal. The thing that we haven't got at the moment is a big user base. So if you look at the research project, one of the key criteria is that we have a significant amount of users, both from a public perspective and from a public sector, elected official, public body perspective as well. Because without those two, we're not going to have the e-lectorate, as in the users of the platform, and we're not going to have the people who will actually make decisions on there either. So it's basically an application that may generate some automated content, but doesn't actually do anything of value.
What's quite interesting to me is the idea that maybe you could possibly, again, it's about accountability, hold an MP to account, and did they do what they say they'd do, and did they do what they are saying they did? And how do you have that level of visibility? Now, there is a lot of visibility on the .gov website, which is around. There was this conversation happening between these MPs in this way. This was the outcome. This is what they talked about. And again, one of the things that popped up last year was this whole idea of, well, if you are communicating outside of official sources, say your Microsoft email account or your Gmail account or whatever, then actually that's a breach of ministerial code and potentially even a breach of personal data and intellectual property and all those kinds of things. And it was one of the reasons why I believe it was Suella Braverman who left her post in the Liz Truss era of prime
Yeah,
ministerialship.
she
So
she was forced out, I believe, because she sent emails out from her personal account containing
yeah,
public policy stuff, which should be through government channels. Which me and you as infosec people, data protection people, we understand to be a big no-no. So yeah, it's that was an interesting case.
and it kind of all folds in together really. It's like well, what are these back channels, and how are those kind of handshakes coming about, and why are they having these meetings with such people, and are they just lobbying? What is the overall agenda? What is
Mm,
the end game of each MP? And I was lucky enough to sit in a seminar with I think his name was Jonathan Slater. Don't quote me on that. Maybe a different gentleman, but he was uh, one of the heads of the Department of Education during the COVID era. And he I think he's just released a book, which is why he's doing a bit of a tour. But he was basically saying that to hold MPs to account, you've got to give them what they want in some ways, and they've got to get something for what they're doing or what they feel they're doing for you. And most of that time is maybe a fairly ruthless ambition to improve themselves, improve their standing, their career wise. And therefore, how do you do that? And you do that by impressing the individual that is your boss. Everyone has a boss,
yeah,
and everyone's trying to step forward. Now, everyone is quite broad. Maybe that's a bit too strong. Probably not everyone. I think there's probably a lot of MPs out there that are, very morally focused and actually do want to do some good and are trying to make some changes, either on the macro national stage or even just in micro local stage. But unless you're incredibly engaged, you're not really going to get that stuff. And yes, there is local media that is putting out what it needs to put out to keep itself running. So how do you actually know what they've done and what that feed is? And there's a lot of noise on just general social media, like too much
definitely.
noise,
Yeah.
and then too much opinion. And we're in an era where opinion is really being touted as fact, and it's become
Mm,
a bit of a problem. So I personally, I'd love to see especially a political based platform, social network platform that's very focused on, well, here are the facts. This is what's happened, and this is what I'm going to tell you, and this is what I'm going to demonstrate to say this is how I followed through. Is that kind of things that you've been thinking about when developing the concept?
yeah, 100%. So one of the points you touched on, which is politics being done behind closed doors, I think that's a big thing, and I think the biggest issue in a democracy is the closed door conversations. So yes, there is written record of formal letters exchanged by people, but the meetings, the kind of calls, the stuff you don't see, yeah, is a little bit behind closed curtains. And I think UK Parliament, UK government, the whole way the House of Commons works, where yeah, you can't call people out in the same way you would be able to um do kind of socially. Like you can't call a politician a liar in the House of Commons. A Labour MP suffered the consequences of doing that. It's designed, not necessarily designed, but it protects itself, and is set up in that way. And you spoke about ministers having individual interests, and if a lobby group wants to um, get something out of a politician, they would leverage that interest. Um, it's the way things are done. But I think in developing this project, we think that things be done in a new way, in a different way, in a way that is more transparent and open, um, and in a way where there is no escape. There's no kind of, oh, you know, 60% of my constituents thought this thing, but I did the other thing because I thought it was the best thing to do for whatever reason. Could be a selfless reason. It could be a selfish reason. Don't want to assume that people are acting against the best interests of others, but how do you know, right? How can you prove it? And there's a lot of stuff that has to be on record. And I think if you look at UK government and public sector management compared to a lot of other societies that exist in the world, there is more information publicly available, and there's a lot more transparency than in other societies. But I don't think it's transparent enough, which is the motivation behind the electorate project.
I think I'd really like to move the conversation into something else that I follow quite closely, and many years ago now, and so that there is a bit of an age gap here, but it's the whole idea that we've gone through a period of general electorate apathy to, well, doesn't matter how I vote, things aren't really going to change, so what's the point in voting? And there was that interview on Newsnight with Russell Brand that sort of kicked all that off, and he wrote a book about it and has become very politically active over the last decade or so. But do you think that apathy is still with us, or has it changed or morphed, or where do you sit on that
Mm,
debate?
I think there's always going to be people that don't care, right? And so if 100% voter turnout is a great thing to aspire to, but realistically, I don't think it's going to happen. I think people are becoming more active, and I don't know this for fact, but I'm sure that voter turnout has been higher in the recent elections and referendum. And so I think it's moving, but one of my problems is that voter and electorate appetite to vote, you're giving people an opportunity to vote once every 4 years. So it's not something that people, I think, look forward to. I think if people had a more regular engagement and vote, then they would be more inclined to turn out in something like a general election or referendum, and that's again what we're trying to give them. And I think there's a concept that people talk about called you vote with your wallet, right? You might have heard that before. So
Yeah,
you vote with how you spend money, but there's loads of other ways that people vote on a daily basis, kind of subconsciously and without them necessarily thinking about it. But think about liking a post on social media, or liking a video, or any type of interaction, comment that you might have, regardless of what that social network's trying to do, whether it's a politically orientated post even, or just a social post from friends and family, your interaction with that post is you expressing an opinion on it. Now, your opinion is generally confined to thumbs up, love heart, smiley face, whatever. But you're still conveying an opinion on the content that is posted. So if we position that to less of a socially themed, look at my new dog, isn't he cute, to this is something that's happening. What do you think about it? We are getting people to vote, but it's not necessarily an election or a vote with meaning at the end of it. So I think that apathy can be reduced, but for me, apathy is reduced through people having a legitimate way to engage and being interested in it. And I think you get people interested in it through education and access. And that's what will ultimately increase voter turnout and reduce apathy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think there have been major shifts from the idea of an apathetic electorate to many demonstrations of that. I think you're right, and I'm going to bring it to a close because think we're just about out of time. But I liked what you said about the likes, the posts, the vote ups of different things, smiley face. And it sort of brought to mind is it an endorsement of an idea or is it an endorsement of the individual, which has also had a bit of a split recently. And I think that's possibly something we can pick up upon at another time. And I really loved what you said about kind of making sure, well, currently on the platform within the electorate project, it's not necessarily a vote with meaning yet. But there probably should be a vote with meaning, because once every 4 years, how much meaning can you derive from that vote if in the last 4 years things have slightly got better or slightly got worse, and maybe in some cases in recent history got a lot worse, and we're not even necessarily having an option to vote. So
Exactly.
we're not even
And just
given. Yeah,
sorry to cut you off again, but just
that's
to
okay.
pick up on a couple of bits you said there, I think interactions with social media in the current world are endorsements of individuals because social media is individualistic in nature. Yes, you can get companies and political parties, etc., posting on there, but you look on Twitter, there's Keir Starmer by name on there, or name any other politician, they're mentioned by name. But what we should be thinking about those people is they are an MP, right? They hold office, and that is separate from the individual. So there's a view there, and on the other point that you raised, which is slowly slipping out my mind, on just jog my memory. What was the other thing you said?
Voting with meaning.
Yeah, voting with meaning. I think that's great, but one of the limitations of the electorate platform is it's online, and that means there are certain barriers to entry
Yeah,
to vote. So, for example, you need uh, either a smartphone or a laptop or some sort of computer, and you need internet access, which you'd like to think, in a modern age, most people have, but maybe that's a slightly privileged view from living in a city, right, where there's mobile network
yeah,
signal all the time. If you live in somewhere very rural, and maybe you don't have a mobile device for whatever reason, you could be part of an older generation, you might not like having a mobile device anyway, despite your age, that is a barrier to entry. So it's not to say that, although we would love the electorate platform to be the online platform where people vote, we do have to consider the other side of things, which is what about people who can't get online and can't access the platform?
absolutely. So I want to thank you for that. I think there is massive considerations there that we need to have a think about, and maybe that could be for the next episode. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Joe.
Cheers, James. Thanks a lot, everyone.